the sustainable world, and the multipolar world. So what I would suggest for this panel here, and I'm very delighted that we integrated the next generation, and we have 3 remarkable young people here among us, in addition to our co-chairs and in addition to our host, the Prime Minister. So what I would suggest to do is, following the theme, the Middle East and the world 2008 and beyond, I would first ask the representatives of the next generation to share with us how they see the world, what their dreams are, what their proposals for action are. And again, we will focus on the 3 dimensions, the multipolar world, and here I would like to ask Maher Bitar to share with us his ideas, his dreams. If you just tell us in 1 second also who you are and what you are doing and where you are coming from.
Thank you very much, Professor Schwab. My name is Maher Bitar. I'm a Palestinian-American currently studying at Oxford University in the United Kingdom. In terms of the future of the Middle East, for us it's actually for the youth delegates here, and we have a number of them in the audience as well. We've heard some very heartening discussions, especially regarding the multipolar world, because we see that strategic issues are actually being discussed in certain depth. For us in 2025 and 2025, we want to see a Middle East of strategic importance, but not because of conflict, but because we have thriving economies and we have vibrant political systems. But in that respect, one of the things that came up for me personally was that I wanted to see more in-depth discussion of issues that were discussed, but usually on the margins of the future scenarios, the future themes that were discussed, especially with regard to the multipolar world. For example, the conflict resolution in the region, I think, is of central significance if we want to move the region as a whole forward economically. 2 other areas that I was particularly concerned about, which include poverty in the region and public health in the region, were flagged. I was very happy by Mr. Barad'i when he was here on stage. And another issue of central significance for us as well is increased political representation in the region that will allow voices like ours to be heard and then our needs met as a result. On the economic front, something that's personal for me is, as an Arab currently living in the diaspora, is I want to see the region become a region of immigration, where we can tap into the talents of Arabs as well as foreigners, but particularly Arabs who are living abroad, who have so much to offer when they come back. So for me, these are basic but central to having a sustainable region, sustainable growth in the region. And those are my hopes and my dreams. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maha. Let's look at the hyper-linked world. And you, Amira Abdulaziz, will explain to us what your hopes and wishes are.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Schwab. I just want you to think with me and to imagine what the world would be in 2025. It would be really fast, and the people will move from one place to another, and it would be very cheap to move, and really the world would be very fast. And I was really a little bit afraid, and I was thinking how our people could go with this fast of the world. And I thought of 3 things. I'd like to share it with you to see if it really is going to work or not. The first thing that we should do is to start investing in education. But the question is, what kind of education? I know that all people have been talking about education. And the education that we are talking about is education that enables our people to think freely and critically and in a creative way. Education that enables people really to be able to engage in not just regionally and to be able to compete regionally, but also competing globally. This would be the first thing. The second thing that I think it would be really important is investing in technology and investing in education and also innovation, and to start having a research and development project in our world in order to stop the brain drain that have been done in our world for a long time. And the third thing would be the freedom of speech and freedom of expression, and also security of this expression after having what we're really thinking about. But we have talked about education, innovation, technology, and freedom of expression. But what's really a prerequisite for all these things to be done is the relationship between the government and the people has to be changed. We have to look at our people as the highest authority in our population, in our countries, and we start to look at them and really to start to look at our people as the people that they really give the authority to the government, and they trust them in spending our money. So the government has to be held accountable for each single things that they are doing in our countries. A final note that I would like to do is really, the world is going very fast. And we have been listening for lots of words by our leaders. And I know that they are doing their best, but we really need things to go faster than this in order to keep pace of what's happening, in order to be able to compete globally in this fast-going world. Thank you, Mr. Schwab.
Thank you. Now let's look at the sustainable world. And Hani, here you are.
Right. Thank you, Professor. Thank you, Professor Schwab, for this transformational experience. Mike, is it not? All right. I just wanted to recap on what this was like for us, for the delegation that we came with, the youth representatives. It is actually heartwarming and heartening to actually feel that these things that worry us are things that have been discussed, and to see it laid out the way that it has been laid out over the past 3 days, the parameters of these problems. But to sort of recap on that from the sustainable dimension, you have to think of this region as something that needs to work with what it has as potential. And that center of the importance that we have on the world stage is the energy that we provide, the oil that we have, and that resource is not an infinite resource, and we need to work with that concept. Now, we've been discussing the idea of the revenues that don't seem to be going down from this point, they just seem to be escalating, and it'll get us to a point where we need to actually invest that into sustainable technology beyond that. We need alternative energy sources, whether for the environmental dimension, whether for the idea that these resources will run out at some point. And if we don't invest in that now, for this generation, the next generation, and the ones that will follow ours even, we need to go beyond that. And what that needs to lead to is a situation where we have achieved the status as the leaders of alternative energy. If we start that now, if we channel that revenue that we have towards that goal, it is easily attainable. And if we don't do that, we lose that center of global importance. And nobody wants to do that. But achieving and investing in that will achieve much more than what is on the surface, as it seems. If we become a center of excellence in alternative energy, we are training our own young people, our own young minds. We are, as Maher said, becoming a center of immigration. We are importing the skills and collaborating with our youth. We are giving them the skills that they need to take this forward. We are, in a sense, at a point in our development where we can go much further, and it is something that has been said over the last 4 days, and to go from that point, it is definitely something that, after this discussion, is something that is possible.
Thank you. Now, Prime Minister, how do you respond to those remarks? And particularly, I would like you to pay also special attention to Amira's remark about the role of governments. So, what is your reaction? Can those dreams be fulfilled, or Do we have a stumbling block, and governments are a stumbling block?
I guess governments are always a stumbling block in the minds of everybody. But let me just say that we would be very presumptuous to think about the future without listening and engaging with those who have the largest stake in the future, the young people. So I think we should thank Professor Schwab for putting this forum together in this way, bringing those young minds to listen, but also to voice their concerns. I believe all that has been said is valid. But that doesn't mean that governments, leaders are not taking that into account. I think we're listening more than ever before. And that's a good start. Thinking of the future, yes, I agree. We are in a dynamic world that's moving very fast. We need to keep up with this. The Middle East has been fouled by many, many issues of peace and stability that should not derail us from the fact that we still need to plan our future. We need to work on infrastructures, on education, and I think education has been the term that has been, circling more than any other term in this context, in this forum. We have a global education initiative. We're looking into ways to prepare those young generations for the future, and we need to make sure that we're giving them the best tools for that future. The challenges are not easy because we need resources. We're still having an expanding population. We have a young population. It's been termed 60% of our population is under the age of 30. More schools, but not just more schools, more equipped schools. Do we have even the amount of teaching staff needed, and do we have the right teachers in place? A big question and a big challenge. So things sometimes are easier said than done, but I think it's important to say them so that we can find ways that we can implement them. I agree, of course, with what has been said about accountability. Accountability is a very important part of the way we should lead our lives today. Governments are accountable and should be accountable for their acts. People have to trust governments, on the other hand, so that they have the means to be able, and the support of the people, to be able to execute very difficult tasks in terms of bringing up the level of our young generations, bringing up their competitiveness. But I think, I personally, hearing these young people, believe that we do own the future, that we can, given their support, given the way that we can convince them to be aboard in all the efforts that we make, that we can succeed in fulfilling their aspirations.
Thank you, Prime Minister. I will ask later the young leaders here sitting among us to react again to what has been said. And I would like now to look at the business community. Do you feel we can fulfill those aspirations? And what is your own aspiration, Mohammed? Would you like to comment on it? How do you see, I mean, from a Kuwaiti point of view, but also from a regional point of view?
Absolutely. I'm very optimistic and delighted to see the engagement, the level of engagement of private and government sectors talking about the challenges facing the Middle East in the future. And the theme of the conference is learning from the future. And we have to address the issue of education very strongly. We can't let our children educated by substandard teachers. We have to invest in better quality. We have to pay better to the teachers that are teaching our young. And the other thing is also to convince them to work in services, to make them believe that it's not only banking and investment banking and engineering are the careers. The largest sector of employment in any economy is the services and retail. And we have to be optimistic about the potential of the Middle East as a place of destination, of investment, of tourism. Why from Morocco to Oman, all that span of land with history and antiquities and weather, we are only about 20 million or 30 million maybe tourists a year, while Spain, one country, has close to 70 million people coming there. So the engagement, the partnership, the quality of partnership between government and private sector has to be taken seriously, addressing mainly education and youth. And we are, as a private sector, we are doing our job, but we have to really get the support of the legislators from all the governments in the Arab world.
Thank you. Khalid, the notion of public-private partnerships was addressed as a prominent business leader. Do you feel at ease?
Let me just
say...
What
is your dream? What should be improved from your perspective?
Right. Ahmed, it's an honor to have the three young people here with us on the stage. And I was listening to what they were saying. Matter of fact, I was listening to another young person in a session just before this called The Crisis in the Gulf, or the Gulf Crash. He might be 55 years old, but matter of fact, he was talking like a very strong 20-year-old young man, Saad al-Barrak, in terms of the way he was looking at the future. And I think, Mr. Prime Minister, if I might add, the point I will change the word should to must. We must act on what these young people are asking us. We should not just listen to them, we must act on it, we must look at it, because the way it's going to go forward in all three scenarios that we're looking at, 2025, and every single one of those, if we do not have proper political reform today, proper economic reform today, proper social reform today, we will not achieve any of those. And when I say reform, reform by actions and deeds rather than reform by talk and big functions. So I think it's very, very important that we do act in order that we save ourselves. We are very rich in this part of the world. We talk about the Gulf. Mohammed talks about Kuwait. The Gulf is very rich at macro level. At micro level, we're still very, very poor. We are very poor when it comes to technology perspective ourselves. We are very poor in terms of innovation. We are very poor in terms of creating the social welfare and creating entrepreneurship in our part of the world. And that goes across the Arab world. So we must act in order to make sure these young people, they catch their aspirations in 2025 and ahead of that. One point which was mentioned by Saad al-Barrak, and it is his point, but I firmly believe in it, and I think it's a must, that we have to reduce the public sector in terms of size. It is overburden on all of us from Morocco to Bahrain. We must privatize. We got even privatize education. Education is not just about investing in teachers. It's not just investing in curriculum. Actually, it's investing in ourselves to teach. The best way of learning is teaching. So we got to be ourselves teaching well and taking the people forward. So I suggest take forward and take actions in privatization of education, health, and I liked what Saad al-Barrak said, even privatize your embassies in the United States, which was a very interesting one in Washington. So I think we must do that. But if I might add a very important point, Klaus, during the past 48 hours, I don't like saying it, but it happened. I mean, I hate being lectured in this part of the world what we need to do ourselves from outside. And one thing that the forum has done, and if you don't mind that I show this to everybody, actually it's been a great thing, achievement by the forum, the dialogue between Islam and the West. And I would emphasize on the word dialogue. It's been a strong thing. And I don't like to put you in a corner, Klaus, but I think we should, as a forum, carry on with this. And we, in the business sector, we should be helping you. Last but not least, the business, it comes to the business. We can talk about legislators, we can talk about governments, we can talk about young people, but we in the business sector, we have the burden on our shoulders that we basically make sure these changes do happen in order to make sure these young people achieve their aspiration.
Thank you, Khalid. Now, Jimmy, you are one of the drivers of the new world with Wikipedia. Do you feel that this region in a world which is doubling knowledge apparently every 5 years now, that it will keep its place or even have its place in the future?
Well, I actually think that it will increase its place. That as we're moving forward into this hyperlinked society as described in the scenarios, we're seeing a lot more participation by a lot more people in cultural production. And one of the areas that the Middle East has lagged for a very long time is in this area. The number of books translated into Arabic, the number of works that are produced, original works, is far smaller than it could be and far smaller than it should be. But we're entering this era of mass participation, of mass communications that's not broadcast but interactive. And so I think that there's no question that some of these disparities are going to begin to even out, that the very rich culture of learning is going to flourish if it's allowed to.
And you say if it's allowed to. What does it mean?
Well, I think that this is a period of massive change, and in the Middle East, when we talk about, as she spoke about, putting the people first, recognizing the sovereignty of the people, recognizing that governments need to be responsive to all the citizens. These things are crucially important, and they lead us directly to some very important policy questions about censorship, questions about access to the tools that people need to be able to produce knowledge. It's becoming costlier and costlier to engage in the kinds of suppression of information as we move into a more information-driven society. And so I think it's time to recognize that a lot of those policies are failing and will continue to fail.
So empowerment is the key word.
Absolutely, yes.
Your Royal Highness, you are traveling around the world. You are not only familiar with this region, but with practically every other part of the world. If you make a comparative analysis, would the Arab world score well?
Would this?
Is this part, or are you afraid it will not catch up with the needs of the 21st century?
No, definitely not. It's going to catch up, and if it's not already there, I think that first of all, this is not a homogeneous region. You can't say that this is one bit. There are lots and lots of it. In the same way that you can't say that Asia is one whole region in terms of economies. I think that this part of the world has a huge amount to contribute to the world economy. I think that there are some issues that perhaps sometimes get in the way of that contribution. And I'm hopeful, and we've heard speeches this week, that hope that something may well be able to be resolved this year. That is an aspiration that we would all desire. But as the region as a whole, in terms of business, can definitely contribute to the world economy, can be part of the global community. And judging from what has been said so far on this panel, I think most people are in agreement that you have to look at education as probably one of the key areas that is going to enable you. Those are enabling factors to allow you to do that. And I've always been taught that the only thing that a human being can do with his or her life is to give its offspring a better education than he or she had previously. If we look forward to 2025, I think that this part of the world will be as vibrant as other parts of the world. And I'm interested in Jimmy's views, and I think that by 2025, governments will be in communication with their people to an extent they haven't been perhaps in the past or are aspiring to now. I've heard it said that the age of deference has been replaced by the age of reference. And I think by 2025 that may well be the case. I think it's moving that way as we speak, but I think by then it perhaps will be.
Thank you. Mrs. Koike, you speak Arabic, you are very familiar with the region, but you come from Japan. What impressions do you take home and what are your wishes for this region?
First of all, I would like to praise all three youngsters representing the voice of young people of the Middle East and Arab. And as Klaus said, I'm from Japan, and in this session we have been discussing what kind of society we have to make by 2025. I would like to introduce not Islam proverb nor the Western proverb, but one of the high priests of Buddhism mentioned that think unthinkable. This is a very important idea. Well, year 2025 is not a faraway future. It's a sort of midterm, but think about the low carbon society or to think about the global warming issues. This is the time that we have to think unthinkable. So he said the relation with Islam and the West, but also I would like to recommend you to think about the East as well. And by exchanging opinions and wisdoms in between Islam, West, and the East, well, I hope that we can find the solution for establishing a sustainable world. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Congresswoman, if I may say so. Let's go back to Maher, Amira, and Hani. Are you satisfied with the responses given? And I would add one other question. What is your biggest worry in looking at 2025? Where do you feel something is really not going well here in this region? I mean, you expressed yourself already, but now after having heard to all the older voices.
If I can start.
If you can start.
Yeah. I'll start with your question about our biggest worry. My biggest worry does stem from my personal background, my personal experience as a Palestinian who's living in America. And in that case, my biggest worry is that we won't have a solution to the Palestinian-Israeli problem. I've had the opportunity to work in the West Bank, to see what is happening on the ground, and there is a very large disconnect between what you see on the ground and between the discussions that we've even had here at certain points. And the discussions remain conceptual here, whereas we're not dealing with a lot of the specifics that I think we do have to tackle in more detail. So my biggest worry is with regard to the future of Palestine for the region, and I think it has repercussions for the entire region if a solution isn't found. In terms of the responses, it's quite an honor to actually be on a panel with everybody here. And I think the discussion that's actually going on about having governments that are accountable to the people is such a vital discussion at this point in time, because as was said, we are at a point of immense change, and the reforms have to happen in the very near future in order for that potential to be harnessed and to actually lead to substantive and sustainable growth for the future. Thank you.
Amira?
My biggest worry about what I listened is this is really nice words and nice promises, but the problem is that we always hear lots of words and lots of promises, but it never happened. So, but what I was thinking about is really when Nick asked us yesterday, are you optimistic? And your question now, are you satisfied? I would say that on behalf of the Egyptian youth, if I may say, that we will be very supportive and we will be optimistic and we will be working on delivering those hopes if our government just put a long-term plan and they tell us we will be in that place in 17 years, and they break this plan into short-term plans, and so we could hold them accountable each year on what they said. And like this, I'll be accountable.
Before moving to Hani, Prime Minister, do you want just to respond?
I certainly do. I think that you need to be optimistic because that's what will motivate us all. You need also to be discerning in the way you look at government because that's what makes us accountable. But the fact is, you also need to read more because we do have plans. I'm not sure how familiar you are. It might be our own fault that we don't explain them enough. But to give you one example, we have, for example, the program that the government is putting together during the president's 6-year term. That program has numbers in there. It says how many schools need to be built, how many hospitals, how many roads, and also it talks about the political reform, about a lot of the issues that address the future in a sort of short to medium term in 6 years. I remember saying at one point that Egypt deserves to be among the best developed nations and that 2025 should be the year we get there. Now we need to define this in terms. We need to define this in more accountable terms. We were not afraid as a government to put accountable numbers in our program. And I think the fact that we're sitting here together discussing this today is part of a new transparency and value that did not exist for a long time in the region. The fact that we are able to, in Egypt, host such a distinguished forum to discuss real issues that concern you, the youth, that concern the whole region, is an added value. And I agree with His Royal Highness. This region is already on the way. We have taken important steps, not maybe at the same level in every country, because some countries are being bogged down by issues. Palestine is a very good example of that, and I agree with your worry about the future. I myself am worried, and we need to all worry. But worry has to be transferred into action. And we need not to stop and not to despair about getting there. But we need to also make sure that we have pragmatic answers, because we can only convince the youth if we have those answers. I can assure you that no government in the region today can afford not to have a plan about its future. Competitiveness will not allow us. The business community will not allow us. Our own people will not allow us. We have real issues, but we are having the solutions. And a government that does not put in solutions in place should not deserve to lead its country.
If I may just follow up this point for a moment. We need, of course, the definition of deliverables if we want to have accountability. But I would like to ask Jimmy to make a comment. We are also living in a world which is more and more characterized by what you said, Yuriko, which is think about the unthinkable. So it's more and more difficult to make long-term plans. But in order to confront best the future, you need a common vision. And I think this is the key. So the values, the vision have to be shared, which provides you with a lot of adaptability if the situation changes. And the situation is very fast changing. Would you agree, Jimmy?
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that.
That's how you did your strategic planning, probably.
Yeah, I mean, I think you really have to, I think one of the most important things that we can do is characterize exactly what our vision is of the future and really look for the common ground amongst a lot of different people. Try to find consensus on the things that we do agree on. For example, with the Palestinian situation, the One Voice movement has done a really great job of surveying ordinary Palestinians, ordinary Israelis, to try to really look at what is the common ground, what is it that most people agree upon, and say, let's really focus on getting those things done. That's a really important piece of that work, because until we actually have that vision of the future that almost everyone can buy into, then we can't even begin to start planning for that future. So, yeah, I agree completely.
Amira, I would like to come back rapidly to you before turning to Hani. In what you said, what would be the first concrete step which you would propose, which is not yet a reality?
Well, the first step that I would propose before we speak about education, employment, and all these kind of issues is really to make the people feel what you had just said, the efforts that you are doing in order for them to feel that they are part of a big vision. So they start work and they will start visualize their own vision into the big vision. So the government is acting and the people are acting. The people, I mean here, the people by all, like civil society, parties, all people. So all together, both, they start working together towards the same vision. And for me, my dream is in 2025 that I will find Egypt, instead of the ING, developing country, I would find ED, a developed country by 2025. This is really my dream.
Thank you. Hani.
Well, I would have to say that, again, what everyone is saying, it's important to have vision, but the thing that worries me most is that we don't realize that vision. That I look at this room and everybody here has that same belief that we have potential in this region to become a pole of strategic importance in this world. We have it within us to do that, but what worries me is that we don't realize that potential. These are serious issues. Your generation admits that these are things that would be more serious for our generation if we don't face them. But what we need to keep in mind is that if these things aren't treated now, it'll be even worse for our children's generation after that, because these things, if they're not solved now, if we don't start acting towards them tangibly, not just as a vision, then these things are not going to get better by themselves.
Thank you. We are coming to an end of the session, but before asking the Prime Minister to conclude our meeting here, I would like to ask each of the panelists very rapidly to give a last message. What would be your message now to the audience here? I mean, we all have to work together. In one or two sentences, what is your message?
My message is that we have to really have a partnership, serious partnership between the private sector, business, and government to address the people's issues and to really make beyond words but action.
Maher?
My message would be that in thinking innovatively, we should at the same time not forget that we have to address the most basic issues which are still a problem in the region, being poverty, being public health, being conflict resolution.
Jimmy?
I guess my message is that the message of the World Economic Forum is that we're committed to improving the state of the world, and my message is that responsibility rests on every single one of us every single day.
Amira?
I would say that 17 years from now, 2025, is not very far away from here. So if we really succeeded in bringing the people into the same boat of the government, so we all together, the people and the government, could work together to the same vision.
Your Royal Highness?
I think that the issues that face the region and face the globe are pretty much the same. But I think it comes down at the end to having inspirational leadership at the highest level, both in business and in politics, in order to lead people out and through to their future. And sitting listening to these two eminent people on either side of me has given me inspiration. And I think that's probably the most important thing, is inspirational leadership that is required in this region.
Thank you. You will have the last word anyway, so Hani?
I think the message that I would say is one of accountability. We have to leave this place with what we've achieved, what we've learned, and hold ourselves accountable, hold each other accountable to achieving what we said that we would do. If you want to achieve change, you have to be the agent of the change that you want to see.
Thank you. Mrs. Koike?
My message is, once again, think about unthinkable and share common value and set the common goal and draw blueprint and act right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Khalid?
I think young people, business community, and the governments, I know that most of the governments, they are starting with the reform, but they must act much, much faster. And we, young and the business community, we've got to make sure that that's done. Let me just add one last thing, because I've promised to do that, and I think it's right. I think every single one of us here, and across the Arab world, and the world at large, I didn't speak yesterday, but I'm going to say it now, human trafficking. Human trafficking is a major issue that we have in our part of the world. We got to work at it hard. One thing that we're putting forward is basically making sure, from an accounting standards perspective, that there's disclosure in all our accounts, which says we have code of conduct when we are achieving that code of conduct. So that's an important point to bring out. Thank you.
Before you, Prime Minister, close our meeting here, I would like to use this opportunity to thank first the President, Mubarak, the Prime Minister, the government, and the people of Egypt for the great hospitality which we have seen here and which we really enjoyed, I have to say, Prime Minister. I also would like to thank the co-chairs here at this table for being so engaged. And if I look into the audience and I see so many of our members, I think it's the engagement of everybody here in the audience which makes this meeting really successful and effective. I also would like to thank my staff, my colleagues who have worked so hard, and here particularly the head of our Middle East team, Sheriff El-Divani, and all the hundreds of people. I cannot, of course, mention them all, but I would like to just give a few names: Dennis Davis, Denise Burnet, Jean-Loup Teneria, Guy Speer, and I could go on and on. They really worked hard day and night to make your stay here enjoyable and also effective. Prime Minister, we are listening to your final words.
Okay, I do it from
Yeah.
Your Excellency, Mrs. Suzanne Mubarak, First Lady of Egypt, Your Excellencies, Heads of State and Governments, Your Royal Highness, Professor Schwab, Mrs. Schwab, leaders of government and business, young leaders of the future, ladies and gentlemen, it's a great honor to participate in such a lively and dynamic forum, a forum that I would declare has achieved a clear success. A forum that has started a few years ago, focusing on the Middle East, in Jordan, alternating and coming here to Sharm el-Sheikh 2 years ago, and it's here back today. It is clear that that forum, over the years, is maturing. We can see a higher level of participation. We can see the engagement that is taking place over real issues that concern our region. We have seen the depth in which those issues have been discussed. We have seen the level of networking that has taken place among all stakeholders. We have seen the participation by the media, and I'm sure many, many successful outcomes will come from this meeting. One man with a dream has made this happen in different regions in the world. Please join me in acknowledging and thanking Professor Klaus Schwab. I also like to thank Mrs. Schwab and the team, the forum team, who have always worked diligently to make this a real success. Minister Rashid, we owe you a lot of gratitude for representing the Egyptian government in preparing for this event. Many real and deep issues have been discussed. We can never ignore the importance of peace and stability for the Middle East to thrive. Our experience has taught us that peace is a state of mind of nations, created and sustained by its leadership. A leadership that must continue to work for peace and not be sidetracked in any way by those who would like to derail efforts for genuine peace, those who might have a stake in instability and in what comes with it. We believe that our region over the years is accumulating more instabilities than it had. Talking about the core problem in Palestine, we now are dealing with other problems, from Afghanistan to Iraq to Lebanon to Sudan and others. Radicalization has been a word that is being used now, a word that is giving more leverage to those who are against peace and stability over those who seek development for prosperity. A serious issue that is echoed by our young people from Palestine and others in their worry about the future. But also a serious message to the leaderships that it is time to build that future on a solid base of peace and stability. Development cannot wait, and we've always heard whether peace is a prerequisite for development or whether a developed Middle East would have a larger stake in peace, a catch-22 that has plagued us for so long. We believe that we have to work on all fronts, political, economic, and social. We cannot derail ourselves from the fact that we would like to see this region as an integrated part of the global community as a positive contributor, as it has always been, to the culture, to the science, and to the economy of the world. We cannot be derailed from that. We should not be derailed from that. I believe that governments in the region need to continue to work towards peace, but at the same time need to continue to develop their economic and social capabilities, meeting real challenges, even new challenges coming in to us with the prices of food and energy the way they have behaved last year. New real issues. I think President Mubarak was right in outlining some of those issues in his opening speech when he talked about new initiatives to start a global discussion about the new trends for energy and food in the world. We can only build our modern society, and this is another thing that has been echoed here clearly, through better education. Education, I would say, would be the word most echoed in this forum during the past 48 hours. We have real challenges. We need to create 100 million new jobs in the next 10 years. We need to turn our society into a knowledge society. I believe that the society is opening up, evident by the number of mobile phones and internet users, by the number of satellite channels, by the activities in the media, and by the fact that we are all getting to be more accountable for our actions. Building the knowledge society means building the skills for the future, putting more computers in our schools, making sure that our young generation is bilingual and trilingual, making sure that they carry our values in the proper way to the rest of the world. We are seeing a redefinition of roles between government, business, and the civil society. I attended a panel relating to the corporate social responsibility. I believe that more engagement, and I think the word engagement mentioned by Professor Klaus is another key word that has to be reflected in our future plans and actions. Engagement of the youth, engages of all across the political spectrums, most importantly, engagement of civil society and of business in development. We have heard from business leaders that they now have a stake in development, in developing this region. The good news is we do have now a strong business community in the Arab world that is sharing in shaping the future of the world. We in government are asking for this partnership. We look forward to their engagement and the engagement of civil society and youth in the planning and the execution of our programs for the future. I believe that we are passing a new threshold in the Middle East. I'm an optimist by nature, and I do believe that this experience of 48 hours has only proven that this region is on the move, that it cares about its future, it cares about its young generation, it cares about its people, and it cares about integrating with the rest of the world. I hope that in future meetings, hopefully next year in Jordan, and hopefully hosting you here in Sharm el-Sheikh in 2010, that we continue to see progress, that we continue to deal with the real issues and to celebrate a new Middle East with more stability and more prosperous. Thank you very much all for being here. See you next year, and see you in Sharm el-Sheikh in 2010.